All right, guys, welcome back to the Robo Show. I'm your host, Chad Robichaux, and super pumped today. Got a amazing military warrior, amazing human being on with us, Mike Ritland. If you guys don't know who Mike is, and I think most of the people that follow my show would probably know who Mike is. Mike's a former Navy SEAL, K9 trainer, and three-time New York Times bestselling author and speaker. He also hosts a show that's raw, unfiltered, and he's wildly entertaining, which I agree. It's a podcast called Mic Drop, and I'm actually pretty pumped because I'm going to be on with him here soon talking about Afghanistan. So if you following us both, then definitely stay tuned to Mic Drop, and I'll be talking about some Afghanistan exploits with Save Our Allies there. But Mike's got a pretty cool book coming out. It's his fourth. I don't know if it's his fourth book, but it's the fourth book. Yeah, so coming out. It's called Unf America. You can spell it out, Unf America. A respectfully open-minded conversation about all the stuff that's going on in America. But before we get into the book, I want to welcome Mike and have him talk a little bit about his background. So thanks for coming on, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Chad. I appreciate you having me on and giving me an opportunity to talk about the book. It's in terms of my background, pretty standard in terms of the soft background. I came in right out of high school, and a couple of years leading up was me preparing for that. It's the whole reason I came in and went through BUDS and went to SEAL Team 3. Did a few deployments there. Went to Iraq, came back from that, and then was an instructor for 3.5 years, which was a pretty neat experience. And then during that time as an instructor is when I really got into dogs. It was the deployment to Iraq. There was a bomb dog that was working with some Marines that we were operating nearby that really kind of was the light switch moment for me. But when after that happened, when I came home, I went straight to instructor duty, and that's when I really kind of dove headfirst into dogs. So from that point until I got out, I just did everything I could to learn and grow as a dog guy, I guess. And then as I was transitioning out, was kind of faced with the decision to either stay in and be a handler or get out and start my own company. And so I got out and started my own company, and then ended up going back as a K9 trainer for the West Coast SEAL K9 program. And then once I left there, I came back, and then that's when I wrote my first book and did the 60 Minutes thing, and all that kind of stuff subsequently led into what I'm doing now, which is, the Mic Drop podcast. Started the Warrior Dog Foundation to retire former military and police working dogs. Started an online dog training subscription gig, as well as a dog food and treats and collars, leashes, like a dog products company. And then I've written, three books prior to this one that were all dog related. The first two are the same book. It's just one of them is the young adult version. So the first one is Trident K9 Warriors. Navy SEAL Dogs is the YA version of that. And then I wrote Team Dog, which is a dog training principle manual philosophy type book. And then, fast forward, started the Mic Drop podcast. And after a couple of years of doing that, I had a lot of really interesting people on that had, decades of experience in the different kind of issues that tend to polarize our country on the political spectrum. And what I came to realize is that, there's the media narrative, and then there's what's actually going on. And those two are pretty disparate. If you look at the data, what affects our country the most is not what gets talked about very much, and so I wanted to kind of put out a book that encompasses all of the different subject matter experts that I've had the pleasure and honor of sitting down with and interviewing for, the long form couple hour, podcast, and really kind of give people the real gouge, if you will, of kind of what our country faces and why. And so, for me, it was important to do a lot of research and really ensure that the data and the numbers that I was presenting were vetted and corroborated through multiple sources. And it wasn't, just me talking out my ass, of what it seems like I think the problem is. But I also wanted to give people an opportunity to do kind of a 3-part analysis of it, which is, one, here's what the problem is. 2, here's where it stems from and how you start to tackle it as a country. But then lastly, and I think this is the most important, is that most people, they see problems that are going on and they think to themselves, man, this is terrible, but what the hell am I going to do about it? Like, I'm just one person, yeah, I can vote, but, other than that, like, I think it's a very overwhelming and daunting feeling for most people to see big things happening in this country and not knowing what they can do about it. So the last part of it is kind of bringing it all together and saying, here's what you as an individual can actually do about it. And what I hope is that it really gives, the reader kind of a big picture look at what the issues are, and then ultimately what we can all do, both collectively and individually, about it to try to fix those problems.
Yeah, as a writer, that's kind of been my thing that I've always thought was important for me to put out a book. Was I don't want somebody to close the cover and then it's over. Like, what's the call to action? What are you going to do with this information that I was able to share? And so yeah, I'm really glad to hear you say that. And I think your subtitle, respectful and open-minded conversation. That's you kind of broke that down just now. It's people. It seems like the ability to have conversations about these controversial topics right now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no doubt. And the title is that way on purpose. It's to get your attention. And then the subtitle is, hey, okay, now that I have your attention, the key is that it's respectful, even though most people look at the title and think, well, that's not particularly respectful. But again, the biggest part of that is that I do think that our country is very much that way and needs to be undone that way. And so, but the key is, if you watch any debates, whether it's presidential election debates all the way down to, 2 different pundits on a news media, program that have, 3 minutes apiece to argue their side, is that most times, these individuals are listening with the intent to respond and not to understand. They don't respect their opponent. They're not listening to truly understand that other person's perspective. And I would say probably the biggest problem is that they don't enter into that conversation with the prospect that they might be wrong, which ultimately is open-mindedness, is be at least willing to listen and open-minded enough to where your mind at least has the possibility of being changed. And I give examples of where that's happened in my life, where I felt very adamantly about one thing, and over time and trying to keep an open mind and thinking about things that I actually changed my mind. And that coupled with, whoever your kind of opponent is, whether it's in a debate or a political rival, whoever it is that's kind of on the opposing side, is that you have to, again, respect them enough to listen to what they have to say and not just step all over them and assume that they don't know what they're talking about and feel like, well, I'm right and there's no way I can be wrong, and I don't even care what they have to say. I just want to prove my point and be right, and that's a pretty toxic, poisonous way to look at things. So I encourage people to enter into every conversation with those things in mind.
Yeah, particularly with the media right now. I do a lot of media. You've done a bit as well. And I go on news interviews, and honestly, I'm guilty of it myself. I go in and I already have my talking points in advance. Like in a news interview, you don't really have time to have that dialogue like we're having right now. But I have my talking points, and then I watch other people do it. And the same thing. They're not even listening to what the person's saying. They're looking for an opportunity to pivot to what they want to say. Yeah. And that conversation has been, the ability to have conversation has kind of died off in our country right now, and it's just pushing people's own agendas and own views. And it's really turning into a detriment for our forward progress. So I'm super interested to see what you have to say about that in the book.
Yeah, I think another aspect of that is that people, generally speaking, aren't willing to hold themselves or their party or whatever side they're on to the same standard as the other guy. There's a lot of hypocrisy that way, and that most times, it's my guy did this, but I'm just going to look away. Well, the other guy did the same thing, and I'm going to, spend 3 days just trying to lambaste him in the media and highlight this mistake that he made while I, brush the same thing basically under the rug on my side. And, all that does is breed resentment. What an interesting statistic is that I think most people don't realize is that there are more independents than there are Democrats and Republicans at this point, which is surprising. I think, at least for me, is that, but I think that speaks volumes to how polarized and kind of poisonous partisan politics have become, is that, there's, fewer, not combined, but each party has less, from a percentage voter, registered voter standpoint, has less registrants than independents, so that tells you that the country is very middle of the road. You get the squeaky wheel treatment on both sides, where it's, the far right and the far left are kind of that squeaky wheel that gets the grease and gets people's attention because they're so extreme and just so ridiculous, frankly. And the reality of it is while 90% of our news media focuses on those fringe groups, the reality of it is that most people don't think that way, and I think that's a huge problem. But
I think a lot of people are probably like me too, and I'm sure there's equal, so I'm registered as a Republican. I vote as a Republican, but I wouldn't consider myself a Republican because I think the party is just as messed up as the other. I mean, Republican Party is so much. So how many Republicans people are registered as Republicans out there that really don't side with that party? And I'm sure the Democrat side too, right? They're registered Democrats, but they don't agree with those. I think the middle is a lot bigger than people think.
No, it's bigger. Yeah, I mean,
and that's Donald Trump, right? I don't believe Donald Trump is a Republican, and I don't think he ever was. I mean, he was a Democrat before, but he just knew he couldn't run independently.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, no, I agree. I think the majority of the country, irrespective of how they're registered, thinks very independently and very middle of the road.
Yeah, I don't think there's much difference between those two parties right now. Especially you just look at the $1.3 trillion stimulus bill. I mean, we had 13 Republicans.
Yeah,
I just jump in on that. I mean, they're just, many of them are all together on the same team.
No, I agree. I think both parties are equally reckless in how they spend money. It's just in very different ways.
Yep.
But the debt, has continued to skyrocket for 20 years now. And that's under multiple administrations of both sides. So I think Republicans are typically fairly guilty of saying that they're fiscally conservative when they're really not, or at least enough, or most of them are not, to the point with which you're having these types of stimulus packages pass. And one thing that worries me is that with the lack of civics classes and financial education that takes place in our public education systems, and I think that's on purpose, is that I think most people really can't even grasp what numbers like that in stimulus packages really are, what they mean, and what they do to our country from a long-term standpoint. As it relates to the burden that's going to put on our kids and grandkids, and who, as a nation, it makes us beholden to internationally, because we're so far in debt and we're overspending to a point with which we're basically making our entire society indentured servants to other countries, and that's a big problem.
Yeah, if you could keep the people uneducated on these topics, then it's a lot easier to manipulate them into voting the way you want them to vote.
Absolutely.
I mean, you look at it, you could get a master's degree in history in America and never have taken an American history class, which is insane. Because you don't have to take it in high school, you don't have to take it in college, you don't have to take it in a master's program. You don't have to know American history. You can be a college professor. You can be a college professor and never have taken American history, which is insane to me. Economics and civics should be, taught in every high school. Anyway, but it's not anymore.
Yeah.
So should a lot of other things like wood shop and check and learning how to balance a checkbook and
I mean, to me, like basic home maintenance, right? Like, I mean, the home ec classes that I think you and I are similar in age, but just basic, simple stuff like that, like how to do laundry and how to iron stuff, how to, clean your house properly, how to, do maintenance on certain normal appliances that everybody has, how to check, your roof for leaks. I mean, basic stuff that really, shy of never owning your own home or even renting a house. I mean, even if you're renting a house, you still need to know how to do that stuff. And those are all just basic life skills that I really don't know, why they're not taught. I mean, to me, yeah, I mean, it's like you can get a minor in transgender studies and have no idea how to even change your own oil or the fact that your roof is leaking. I mean, to me, that's just dumb.
It's basic dude stuff.
Yeah, basic dude stuff.
Get right in the curriculum.
Yeah. Well, what even is a dude anymore, Chad? I mean.
Yeah, I don't know. Dude is considered toxic. So
yeah.
But so I want to go back to Tricos. Is Tricos your company that does all the training? That's the company that had the contract with the teams. What do you guys? A lot of people that listen would be super interested to know. I mean, obviously, a lot of people that be listening would, love to know what a Navy SEAL does, but what a Navy SEAL dog handler does. What is it you were teaching them to do? Is it just bombs? Is it bite? Like,
sure.
Yeah.
So, Tricos is my dog company. The Team Dog brand is my online training and food, treats, products, etc. All of that stuff can be found at MikeRitlandCo.com. So if you want to look at all of the different things I'm doing, that's the best place to go. But for, in terms of the way K9s are used and incorporated into our special operations forces, and I will say that this is largely the same unit to unit. And by that, I mean, SF, Rangers, Delta, Dev Group, whatever, we all use dogs similarly, just like there are nuances between different branches that way. There are, I would say, probably even less nuances between dog teams. But the primary mission set is for that dog to be able to accompany our units, pretty much everywhere you go, with the exception of underwater, and be able to do route clearance or explosive detection, whether that's in route clearance or looking for caches, looking for IEDs, really in any capacity where there might be explosives cached or set or otherwise that may, cause harm, is that we want them to be able to go look for them and indicate on them. The second part of that is kind of the same thing, but for humans. And generally speaking, it would be, counter ambush stuff where you've got humans hiding in a false wall or a false floor, or just, in a room behind a door or in a closet, whatever it is, or even if they're just, squirters running out the back of a target, or it's a rural area and they're trying to ambush and the dog comes into that human odor similarly to the explosive detection and gives an indication that there are people that are not within the nucleus of that operational outfit present, and they're nearby, and he's going to let you know that that's the case. And then so for the handler, the handler's job is really twofold, and what I think most people are surprised or impressed to hear is that the handler is basically reading the dog nonstop. Is that the dog is providing a truckload of information based on what he's doing. If you really pay attention and really study that dog's body language, there's all these little things that a dog does, no different than anybody who's listening, their pet dog. They may bark a certain way when somebody comes to the door versus a rabbit in the backyard, and you get to where your dog so well. Oh, I know he's about to take a dump. Oh, I know he has to go outside. Oh, he's barking this way. There's probably a rabbit on the. But it's the same thing with them. Obviously, the stakes are much, much higher, but it's that same kind of thing. It's the handler's job to read the terrain and the wind and the weather, to understand how that's going to affect explosive odor and human odor, and then to read the dog. And so that handler is constantly evaluating everything that's going on in front of him, constantly evaluating what the dog's doing, how he's responding to all this different stimuli. And then based on that, coupled with his experience from training and working up and working with the dog, is that he's, giving that information to, the platoon leader or the point man or whoever, depending on what's going on. Say, hey, I think there's, people up here on the right after this bend, or hey, stay away from the right side of the road. Let's call EOD up because my dog is showing that there's explosive odor up that way or whatever. And so that's the primary gig. They also obviously provide a lot of morale and just kind of that slice of home, if you will, for a lot of our guys overseas, having a cool dog hanging out, especially one that's saving your ass. It's, finding bombs and going and biting bad guys, that you get to hang out with. This is a pretty huge bonus on top of it, but that's kind of the 101 of what they do.
All right, guys, I want you to visit SaveOurAllies.org. What Save Our Allies is, it's an effort to rescue Americans and our allies that are still stuck in Afghanistan after the United States pullout. It began with me going to get my friend and his family, and it ended after me and 12 of my friends went there. It ended 10 days later where we ultimately got 12,000 people out. The mission continues. We're going to continue to rescue people. And we're going to make sure that these people go from the home they lost to a new home and a new beginning with a new sense of hope. We need to support this effort. We need your help. SaveOurAllies.org. Yeah, I was. I didn't have any dog experience at the Force Recon, my Force Recon units, but I went over to JSOC. I was with the premier SEAL team there, and they had their dog handlers. They had all Malamars, and they were. I know you said that you don't go anywhere that except underwater, but they were jumpers, and they halo those dogs in, and the dogs go freaking nuts when they start getting ready to jump. Well, at least one of the dogs will seem to go nuts before they get ready to jump. And
they're like shy of slapping a set of twin 80s on the dog and having them scuba dive. There's pretty much no environment that we operate in that they don't come with us. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and they more courageous than us as much as we want to be courageous.
Yeah, well, here's the deal with that is that that's one of those things where unfortunately, the dogs, generally speaking, don't understand nearly to the same degree what the amount of danger is. Now, they definitely feed off of us and read our emotional body language as well. But, the dog doesn't understand that he's looking for explosives that can blow him up. We understand that. The dog understands that he's looking for a very specific target odor that we as human beings have rewarded him for finding over and over and over. He has no idea that these are dangerous explosives that are placed in the ground, with the intent to take our lives. That's the human being's ability to logic and reason. And that's not to take anything away from the dogs. It's just, our training conditions them to operate the way we need them to operate. Where their courage absolutely shines through is on the bite side when dogs are getting shot. And stabbed and fought pretty hard by guys, and they're continuing to fight through that and manage to subdue the suspect or the insurgent or whoever, and still take them down. Then they do have a truckload of courage. But it's important to think of that, from that standpoint, that the dogs view things very differently than we do. And one of the things that I always say in my training is that a dog's mind works more like a calculator than it does our mind. Is that everything for them is A plus B equals C. They make a simple association with everything. They don't think in a language. They don't have an internal monologue. So while we think things through and use logic and reasoning to figure things out, they're making a simple association with everything. And so one of my favorite jokes is, if you want to see who loves you more, your wife or your dog, lock both of them in the trunk of your car for 2 hours. When you come back and pop the trunk, who's happier to see you? And that, while that's a joke, that really highlights the way a dog's mind works versus a human being's. So it's important to look at it that way.
You do all this training for the teams, and we got this online training. Who is the online training available for?
So it's really for every normal dog owner. I found myself. After writing the book and even before writing the book, I do these speaking engagements and just traveled a fair bit and found myself having the same conversation basically all the time. Like, oh, hey, you're a dog guy. Hey, my dog does this. How do I get him to blah, blah, blah. And so that led me to write the book. And then the book, just like shooting a gun or jujitsu or whatever, is that, you can only learn so much from a book. Video is even more important. Obviously in person is the best way, but video representations of what was in the Team Dog book that I wrote is kind of how the online stuff stemmed. And then it's turned into really a community where, it's been around for 5 years now. And, there's forums that I go in every Monday and I interact with customers, subscribers. They ask questions, they post videos, I give them feedback. They say, hey, I watched your video on, leash control or dog aggression or whatever. And my dog did this, this, and this. What do you think? And so I'll go in there and interact with them and respond and answer questions and stuff. So I'm really proud of the community that we've all built, because there's a lot of really good members in there that post a lot of good advice in their own videos and what have you. So it's a pretty neat project, but it's really for, every normal dog owner.
I know we were talking today about, Unf America, that book, but if somebody's interested in your book on, they have a dog and they're interested in learning some things, what book would that be?
So I would get the Team Dog book, and I would sign up for the Team Dog online training. So if you go to teamdog.pet, you can access it there. Or again, if you just Google my name, my website will come up first, and that's the best kind of hub if you want to order food and treats or sign up for the online training or any of the books or what have you. That's really the best way to go about it.
I'm gonna be going there. I got a Vizsla.
Oh, good.
So I have actually had her trained, but man, you gotta be, she's so smart. She's so willing to please, but she is high energy.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's pretty common, and the thing with high energy dogs that I think where most people make the mistake is they try to wear them out physically. And just like with people, right, is that dogs need mental stimulation and engagement. And so if all you're doing is a lot of physical activity to wear out a hyperactive or high energy dog, you're basically giving them a bigger gas tank to be an even better asshole. And just like with people, again, like if you think about high school or college or, at work, there's times in all of our lives that we can look back on where we were mentally really, really taxed and did nothing physical and were exhausted at the end of the day. Like you're studying for finals in high school, like you're not doing anything physical. At the end of the day, you're completely spent having done nothing but sit around all day. And so with dogs, that's a big component. And by shaping behavior using operant conditioning, primarily the positive reinforcement quadrant of it to shape desirable behaviors that you want in a dog and just get them to start thinking and offering behaviors, and then you shape it and reinforce it to whatever it is that you want. That makes them use their mind. And I always recommend that for clients that live in, high rain environments or really gnarly winters where they're inside a lot, is, shaping the dog to plank on top of an upside down food bowl or something, something. It can be completely arbitrary. Obviously, all of the desired normal obedience behaviors, you should shape and teach your dog as well. But by getting them to teach or getting them to offer behaviors and teaching them through that method works really, really well for dogs that kind of wear people out from an energy standpoint.
Yeah. Well, obviously you have a heart and care for these dogs, and you have the Warrior Dog Foundation. I want to give you a chance to talk about that. And how people.
So that was born really out of necessity. Is that back in August of 2010, we took our first 2 dogs in that were from tier 1 guys, and they were both just dogs that both had been wounded in combat and had done a number of deployments, and were just they were really hard to deal with dogs, and they were going to get put down if me or somebody like me didn't take them. So I took them in, and then that kind of opened the floodgates, and now we've taken over 250 dogs in the last 11 years, and and it's a lot of work. It's dangerous. These are all dogs that are in that same category, as that they were a big enough liability for the unit to say we would rather put this dog down than to keep it here, because it's that hard to deal with. And so those are the ones that we get in, and so it does turn into kind of a labor of love, but it's an important project. And to walk through the kennel and look at 30 different dogs, because we have a capacity for 30 dogs and we're full all the time.
You finding homes for them, or?
Some of them, yeah. And some of them we've even been able to repurpose and, work with for several months and then get them to a different department that maybe is a little more set up a little better to handle a dog like that. And so we've been able to repurpose a number of them. We have rehomed a number of them. But I want to reiterate, for those that live in an apartment and have 2 other dogs and a couple of small kids, say, hey, I'll take one of those dogs. Like, these aren't those dogs. There's a reason we have them, and it's not because they're easy to deal with. So in every instance, every single dog that we get because they've bit a bunch of people that they weren't supposed to. So they have a track record, they have a bite history, they have a certain mentality that's tough to deal with. But to walk through the kennel and look at all of them and know that every single one of these dogs would have been euthanized if we hadn't taken them. Just makes you feel pretty good about what we're doing. So,
especially considering what they've done for our country, for other people, for our teammates, if we can do it, it's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Do you think, I'm get off on another subject here, but I'm just super interested to hear you talk. Like, obviously, if you know anything about my background with Mighty Oaks, my life has really been committed to helping people with, life issues, combat trauma, PTSD. I mean, these dogs clearly have to, what they're exposed to, they have to experience some PTSD at the same level as, or if not worse, right? Because they don't understand.
Yeah. So it's a catch-22, no doubt about it. And that, yes, they do manifest very similar symptoms, from that type of stuff. The interesting thing about it is that, because they don't have the ability to logic and reason, I would say it makes it not necessarily easier, but more simple to try to address those problems, where you and I would try to rationalize it, and you're working your way through that. With them, it's basically, it's that A plus B equals C association. So if gunfire, or let's say, being in a helicopter is A, being surrounded by a real heavy, intense gunfire that rattles the dog is B equals C, I shut down, the dog shuts down. And so, in a case like that, they may now just say, okay, A equals C, right? So now just hearing a helicopter makes them associate with gunfire, and now they shut down. Right. And so now I take that helicopter sound and I recreate it, right? So there's a lot of different, you can just use audio stimulation of using, you can stream all these different noises and what have you, and put it at a really low volume in a very calm, sterile environment where, like, maybe I'm playing tug with him or feeding him, while really, really faintly he hears helicopter noise in the background, and then it's a little louder, and then a little louder, and then you're just building up. To do the same thing with gunfire, you can do the same thing with anything. And so you're basically, if you think about it, like the dog's mind is a piggy bank, and he's got all these negative coins that are associated with helicopter noises.
Right.
And so now I want to replace all those negative coins with positive coins. And so now the dog, instead of associating helicopter noises with gunfire, and now he kind of shuts down, now he associates it with food, and now he gets excited when he hears helicopter noises. Now sounds easier than it is, because it is tough. It takes a long time. You got to be very meticulous, very calculated and strategic as to how you build that up. But that's the general kind of rule of thumb.
So interesting, because this is exactly my methodology for my own recovery, and with helping a lot of other veterans. I mean, I believe, the dog has a limbic system, right? And a limbic system triggers the same way, right? We have a kind of a learned or exposure that results in something negative. So our limbic system says it's dangerous, and we respond a certain way. And I believe that instead of people medicating those symptoms and numbing themselves out, they need to have prolonged exposure, which is a therapy process, and prolonged exposure where they actually expose themselves in a more controlled environment to those same triggers, and let their limbic system learn that it's not dangerous anymore.
Yeah, desensitize. Yeah,
desensitize yourself to it. And I've used this in my own life. If something that I know sets me off, I want to just gradually expose myself to it again. Let my brain learn, like, hey, this isn't a bad thing anymore. It was bad in that environment, and that's why I'm reacting this way. But let me expose myself slowly to it, and it's really been helpful for me personally, and I've been able to help a lot of other veterans through that process as well. And I think it's no different. I would agree with you. It's so much easier for the dog because.
Well, I would say it's simpler. There's no gray area with them, and that's the nice part about it. Now, the downside is that sometimes gray area can help bridge something that's really severely traumatic. You can say, hey, calm down, it's okay. Like, dogs don't really get that the same way we do, or trying to explain something in a way where somebody like, oh yeah, I never thought of it from that way. Now that I think of it that way, I can, make this correlation. Like with a dog, you can't do that. It's all based on physical activity and stimuli, so it makes it simpler. I wouldn't say it's necessarily easier because of that, is that, in the advantage you get and that it's simpler, the disadvantage you get is that you can't kind of massage your way through some of that the way you can with human beings. But yeah, it's neat how similar that process is.
Man, I'd like to talk more about that one day with you.
Well, when you come on the show, we'll dive deep. So.
Yeah. Well, hey, I got this hat on. I want to kind of plug it while we're on. Eagles and Angels. Did you do one yet?
I did. Yeah, it's such a neat project.
Yeah, it's a neat project. They raised. They did my hat. This is a patch for my butt. I don't know. Everybody gets a hat from me. I'm like, yeah, that's my cross. You gotta go. But it's the running joke. But if you guys listening, Eagles and Angels is an organization, a former CAG guy that started it. They take uniforms of service members and put it on hats. They did mine. I'm just learning right now. They did Matt's. And for us, they raised $10,000 for Save Our Allies to go towards our Afghanistan project. So I think every hat he sells, he has a charitable effort behind it.
Yeah.
I'm like sporting all kinds of stuff today. I got another Recon Marine or another, I don't know if it's Recon Marine, another Marine has a Virtus outdoor gear. I just sent me a whole box of stuff.
Oh, cool.
Pretty, man, it's probably the most, I'm not saying it because I'm supporting him, but just straight up, it's like probably the most quality. I haven't worn it yet, but it's probably the most quality outdoor gear I've ever put my hands on. And he was really pumping it up and sent me a bunch of stuff. So I'm interested to try to break it in.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely check out these companies, Eagles and Angels and Vogue, which is a Virtus outdoor gear, Virtus outdoor group. And then for Matt's book drops November 16th, but you go on Amazon right now and pre-order it. Unf America. He's holding it up. If you're not watching and listening, he's holding up Unf America. Get on Amazon, pre-order it. I'm gonna get it as well. And then his other books. Just Google his name. Tricos is his company. And what's the one more time for people that want training, dog training, the website?
Just teamdog.pet.
Teamdog.pet.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And then again, I'm going to be on Mic Drop here soon, so stay tuned to both of our shows. And thanks so much for coming on, man.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else before we drop?
No, just I can't thank you enough for having me on, and looking forward to meeting you and sitting down here soon. So it'll be good.
Right on. All right, Les. Thanks for listening. Catch you next week.